still can't hear me? Oh, you can hear me now. Okay, good. All right, sorry about that. What I was saying while I was still muted apparently, but thanks for letting me know, Pierce, is somebody else was using the Zoom account this morning, and I was trying to notify them, hey, I need to kick you off because I got a class starting, and they weren't responding. And so I finally had to just boot them off in the middle of their role play that they were doing probably. So I feel bad, but unfortunately had to get this going for you guys. So I apologize that I'm a couple minutes late in getting started to rocking and rolling. So hey, what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about needs analysis. So let me kind of explain what that means and how that applies to you and how it's going to help you and all those things. So um, ultimately, so far what we've talked about last week was we talked about the company foundation. We talked about being able to put together your business plan. We talked about then prospecting and being able to generate appointments. And then on Friday, we went through and we talked about managing your time and making sure that you're being productive with your time. And we talked about how being productive is not necessarily the same thing as working. And so I gave you a way of keeping track of your time so that you would be able to know that you are being effective with your time. Well, so today what we're going to talk about then is we're going to spend today and tomorrow, we're going to go through and we're going to talk about needs analysis. Now, here's the piece with this that's important is as you get appointments with people and you go out and you meet with them, probably the number one question that I get asked in the last 15 years that I've been training is, what would be a really good listing presentation? And I'm going to give to you, we'll get to the listing part of it between tomorrow and actually Wednesday is when we're going to really hit on the listing presentation pieces of things. But I'm going to give to you basically the best listing presentation. And probably the best way for me to say it to you is you are the listing presentation, meaning sometimes people want to have all this great stuff to take out on a listing presentation, but essentially you are the presentation. And you'll see what I mean as we go through and we talk about this today. Now, oh, thank you, Ginger. Yeah, if you guys will all throw into the chat box your first and last name and the office that you're in, I'd appreciate it, just so I have a record of that. Thank you. But here's the thing is here's where I want to start with. So we're going to talk about the listing presentation. We're also going to talk today about working with buyers as well. And where I want to start with for you guys today in terms of this, we're going to spend most of the time today really hitting on and talking about when you get an appointment to go and meet with a buyer, what is the process that you would want to go through as you're working with that buyer? So kind of keep in mind that that's the idea of what we're going to be hitting on today is the process. And this applies to both buyers and sellers, but we're going to talk mostly today about buyers. And then as tomorrow we get into it, we'll kind of finish up the buyers and start into the seller side of things. And then on Wednesday, we're going to talk about listing presentation pretty much the whole time. Now, but here's where I want to start with. So what I want you to do is just for a minute here, I want you to write down, assuming that you have just gotten an appointment to meet with a buyer. Okay, so we're going to assume you just met this buyer, and it almost doesn't matter where they came from, meaning how you met them. Somehow it was a referral, a prospecting. I don't really care. It doesn't matter. You've met this buyer. And they have now come to your office. You're now going to sit down with them and you're going to talk with them about what they are looking for in a home. So here's what I want you guys to start with is I would like you to write down and not in the chat box yet. I may have you throw it in the chat box later or just unmute and talk with me. But what I want you to do is to just write down on a piece of paper somewhere where that you're at, what are the 2 or the 3 questions that you ask a buyer? So now for you guys that are seasoned agents, writing down what are the questions that you ask a buyer when you first meet with them. If you're a new agent and you've never met with a buyer yet, just write down what you think you would ask them. So I want you to writing down, what are 2 or 3 questions that you would ask a potential buyer? They've come to your office, you've exchanged your niceties, you've now talked about, just you've chit chatted, I guess. We're done with the chit chat now, and it's time for you to figure out what is it that they're wanting to buy in a home, and what are 2 or 3 questions that you would ask that would help you to know what it is they're looking for. So take a couple of minutes and just write that down. Now, the reason I'm going to have you write it down right now is those questions may change. They may not. It depends on you, but they may or may not change as we get into this later in the next hour and a half or so. You may change your questions, but I want you to write them down now, so that when I come to them, because there's going to come a point when I'm going to have somebody share with me the questions that they have written down, and we'll talk about them. But I want you to have them written down now, so that if they do change, you don't change, so that I can show you what I mean by this. So hopefully you've got 2 or 3 questions written down that would help you to know what you're going to look for in a home for this buyer. Okay, so now with that in mind, here's where we're going to start with today. So let me get my whiteboard back up here again. And here's what we're going to talk about. Is the first thing we're going to hit on starting right now is the top 2 or 3 complaints that buyers or sellers have about us as agents. So either throw it in the chat box, or you can unmute and just share with me what you think the top 2 or 3 complaints that people have about real estate agents are.
Wasn't really engaging.
Say that again.
The real estate agent wasn't really engaging.
Oh, not engaging. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, good. I like that, the idea. So a version of that is one of the things. So we're talking about the top 2 or 3. So here's what I would say. So Pierce, for how you said it, I'm going to word it a little differently, but I think you're right on. And what it was is that we don't listen. And somewhat related maybe to even number 3 as well, honestly. Okay, somebody else. What other things would you say would be the top 2 or 3 complaints that people have about us?
Well, one is that they don't answer their phone or return calls. Another that I've heard is that agents want to show the buyer houses that are more expensive than what they feel comfortable buying, than the budget that they've given the agent.
Okay, good. Thanks, Ginger. So the number 1 complaint is that we don't return calls. So that's the number 1 complaint that seems to be said about us as agents. Number 2 is that we don't listen. And then number 3 falls into what Ginger was saying, is that we waste their time. So those are the top 3 complaints that people have about us as real estate agents. Is number 1, we don't return their calls. Number 2, that we don't listen to them. And number 3 is that we waste their time. Now, why do you think people would have that experience of us? Is that, I mean, obviously number 1 makes sense, is you don't return your calls, then that's going to be frustrating. But why would a consumer have the experience that agents don't listen and that we waste their time? Now, to some extent, part of that is, the reason for that is going to be because of what Ginger was saying, is we go out and we want to show them properties that are above their price range that they don't qualify for. And so they're going to feel like, oh, well, they wasted my time going and looking at the house, get me excited. But there's more to it than even that, though. So any thoughts or ideas as to why they have the experience that we don't listen and we waste their time?
Because we haven't asked them the right questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Barbara. That's exactly right. Here's what happens is, because we don't ask, let me say it this way. And in fact, we're going to get into this quite a bit today, is we tend to ask questions that are more about us than they are about the client. We ask questions that relate to what's important to us, not what's important to them. So here's one of the things that you're going to hear me say quite a bit over the next couple of days. And even though you're probably going to laugh a little bit at how I say this, keep in mind, every one of us has our own version of this. We don't realize that we're doing this, but we're doing it. And so here's what it is. I like to say it this way. Is it okay if we let them buy the house that they want? And we typically would laugh at that and be well, like, well, yeah, of course we're going to let them buy the house that they want. But I'm going to show you and I'm going to demonstrate to you as we go through and we talk about this, how our number one skill that we need to develop and continue to keep working on is communication. Yet, as communicators, we are not very good at it. And the reason we are not very good at it is we just have never been trained how to communicate. And so what happens is this, is we think we know what is important to them, when in reality, we really are talking about more of what's important to us. So where they get this experience that of us that we don't listen to them is because what happens is they will tell us what they're looking for in a home. We then interpret it in the way that we think we should hear it, which is not the way that they meant it. And then as a result of that, we now then go out and start talking to them about what's important to us, not what's important to them, because we didn't take the time to actually find it out. So let me show you what that means and how that works. Is the way that your brain works is 10% of who you are is conscious. Now, I did part of this on a morning ascent the one day, but we're going to expand upon it today if you were on that. But 10% of who you are as a personality is conscious. 90% of who you are is unconscious. And so, said another way, what basically happens is this, is we are making decisions, and we make the decisions based upon the 90%. We're making our decisions based upon this unconscious area. Think of it this way. Your brain has been wired and you have made a bunch of decisions that you may or may not be fully consciously aware of, but you've made these decisions. Well, as a result of that, you go out and interact in such a way, more so because of this 90%. Now, think of it this way. Let me say it this way. Up here in the conscious part of your brain is where things are logical, they're reasonable, they're rational. Down here in the unconscious part of your brain is where things are illogical, they're irrational and unreasonable. So the purchase of a property, though, is going to be down here in this emotional part of us. So let me explain it this way. Any of you that have had your license for any time at all have come across someone who has said to you, I don't know how to explain to you what I'm looking for in a home, but I will know it when I see it. And so what happens then is this, is they will say to you, I know what I want, I just don't know how to explain it. Now, either unmute, show of hands, something, throw it in the chat box. How many of you have heard that said before, or maybe even said it yourself? I don't know how to explain it, but I'll know it when I see it. All right, I got a yes, sir.
I haven't had that happen too much. And I've worked with a lot of buyers.
Okay.
What I have, my experience has been that they at least know where they want to start out, and they give me some basic information, and then it comes out and it changes through the process, and I'm able to identify, okay, now they're zeroing in on what they really want, because what they told me in the beginning wasn't what they really wanted. So it's more of a shift rather than starting from a complete blank slate.
Okay, good, thanks. Anyone else? Okay, well, so if not, then you're going to hear people that are going to say things like, I don't know how to explain it, but I'll know it when I see it. Now, when that happens, what typically is going on is that what they're saying to you is, I have the information stored down here in the unconscious. I just don't know how to bring it up to this conscious level to explain it to you. Now, so let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say that you met me, that I'm a potential buyer for you. I have come into the office to sit down with you. We've done the chit chat, the niceties. You're now going to start asking me the questions that I had you write down. Now, I'm not going to have you share those with me yet, but you're now going to ask me those questions. So now you start to ask me those questions that are going to help you to know what you're going to show me. And here's what I say. What I say to you is, I want to buy a home that is high on a hill with a view of the city lights. So as we've talked through this, now what we land on is, I want to buy a home that's high on a hill with a view of the city lights. So if that's what I tell you that I want, what are you now going to go show me? And what you don't need to tell me specific areas. That's not what I mean. But in general, what are you going to go show me? Properties that are what?
High on a hill and a view.
Right. That's what everybody is going to do, right? Is if I said to you, okay, I want to buy a home that's high on a hill with a view of the city lights, you're now going to go out and look for properties that have a view, that are higher up, and that's what you're going to start to show me. Now, let me explain why this can be a problem. Here's what happens. Remember that what they have said is, I don't know how to explain it to you, but I'll know it when I see it. And so they're saying that because the information is stored down here in the unconscious, and I'm going to tell you why they can't tell you in just a little bit, by the way. But the information is stored down here in the unconscious. They're trying to figure out a way to bring it up to this conscious level so that they can now explain to you what they're looking for. Well, the best that they know how to do it is to say that I want to buy a home that's high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Well, as a result of that, then what happens is this: that information is now relayed or communicated, you could think of it that way, from their conscious over to, so this is now you. That information is relayed to your conscious part of your brain, which is the 10%. And then what happens is you then take what that means to you and interpret it based upon your 90%. So let me say that even a little bit differently for you. Think of it this way. When they're telling you what they want to buy, the reason they're saying they don't know how to explain it to you is because in actuality, what they're looking for in this area here is a benefit. There is some benefit that they're looking for in the property. But we don't talk in terms of benefits typically. Instead, the way you and I have been trained to communicate up here at this conscious level is going to be in terms of features. So think of it this way, is what they're doing is they're explaining to you features that would meet the benefit. Now, this is really important. Make sure you understand what I'm saying is they're explaining to me the features that they would want to buy. Excuse me, they're telling me the benefits that they want, but they don't know how to put it into words in terms of benefits because it wouldn't make sense. And so instead, how they say it is that I'm looking for this feature. And it's not necessarily the feature that they want, but it's actually the benefit. Now, I'll explain that more as we get going, but I want to introduce that to you, that what happens, remember I said, is it okay if we let them buy the house they want? And like I said, usually if you guys were in the room, there would be a few chuckles when I say that. Well, the reason I say that, is it okay if we let them buy the house they want? But because here's what happens, is they say they want a home that is high on a hill with a view of the city lights. We now take that, what they have said, we interpret it, what that would mean to us based on our 90%. And then we go out and look for properties that meet our 90%, not their 90%. We go out and look at homes that would work for us, what we understand their mean. So let me say that even a little differently. The benefit they're looking for in saying they want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, we take that home high on a hill with a view of the city lights and interpret it into our own benefit of what that benefit would mean to us. Now let me tie this together. So when I said to you that they have this experience that we don't listen and we waste their time, here's what happens, is they tell us what they want. When they say they want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, what they're telling us is they're describing in a manner that makes sense to them, the benefit that they want. Well, when they do that, and then we interpret it and it means a different benefit to us, when we go out then and show them properties, we end up talking about what the benefit means to us. They get this experience that we're wasting their time and that we didn't listen, because we start talking about it in terms of what it means to us, not what it means to them. Now, is everybody with me on that? Any questions? Any struggles with what I've said so far?
I am with you, but can you give us an example of
Yes.
what, that benefit might mean to you?
Perfect. Yep. I'm going to continue on with this idea of the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. All right. So here's what happens then. So I say to you that I want to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Then what happens is you go out and you start now showing me properties that are high on hills that have views. Well, as you are showing me these properties with views that are high on a hill, what happens is we go out and we look at it and you go, so what do you think? And I go, yeah, I mean, it was nice, but like, it's not necessarily what I was thinking. And you go, okay, well, let's go look at some others. So you go show me other homes that are high on hill with views. And I keep saying, well, I'm not sure. Now, let's do this. So here's probably the best way that I can do it to help you understand, Barbara. So in the chat box or unmute, either way, and I'm good with either, but share with me, if you were to get a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, why would you want it? So I want everybody on here, throw something in the chat box, because we need more than just a couple, or unmute and tell me, and just share with me, why would you want a home that was high on a hill with a view of the city lights? And there's not a right answer. Just for you personally, why would you want it? All right. So Pierce said to be away from a dense population. Great. Perfect. Well, who else? James, views. Okay. Nicole says large windows to see the views while I'm in the kitchen. Okay, great. Barbara, ambiance. Good. Perfect. Give me a couple more. Used to have a house like that. Okay, good. Give me at least one more. Somebody who hasn't participated yet. Everybody else is watching The Price is Right or something, I guess, on TV. Well, right. All right, here we go. Peaceful environment. Perfect. Thanks, Nathan. All right. Now, here's the thing. Remember when I said that what happens is we interpret what it means to us. So I just asked you guys why you would want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, and you just gave me a bunch of ideas. Well, what happens then is this. Your reason for wanting the home high on the hill with a view of the city lights might be different than the reason they would want the home high on the hill with a view of the city lights. And because of that, because of it being for a different reason, what tends to happen though is we go out, and when we're showing the properties, so now remember, I'm the buyer, you're out showing me properties. You go and show me the properties, and then what's going to happen is that people are going to start, you are going to start to talk about it. You might not say the exact words that we just talked about, but you're going to talk about the property in terms of what it means to you and what you would think they would want that home high on the hill with a view of the city lights for, which then causes them to potentially get a little confused on the whole scenario. Now, so let me keep this going. So, okay, so you've taken me out and you've shown me a bunch of houses that are high on a hill with views, and I keep saying no, 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 no. Well, what happens then is you typically are going to be like, okay, well, I'll keep trying to find some more homes that are high on a hill with view of the city lights. Instead, now I do what typical buyers are going to do. I go out now and I start to search and look at properties on my own on the internet. And I come across one that I'm like, oh, this would be perfect. So I send it over to you. Hey, I want to go check out this property. I either send you the MLS number, I send you the address. Here's the property. Now, you go to the MLS and you pull it up. And when you pull it up, one of the things that you notice is that the property is not high on a hill with a view of the city lights, and instead it is tucked away in a canyon and is surrounded by nothing but trees everywhere. What's the first thought that goes through your head as an agent when that happens? Because I'm telling you, you will have had that happen to you if you've been in the business at all, where they have described for you they want one thing, and then they send you a property. Oh, this one looks like it would be perfect. And it's totally different from what they said they wanted. So what's the first thing that goes through your head? This isn't at all what they wanted. They aren't going to like it. Yeah, good. Thanks, Nathan. Some version of that is typically what happens, is that we tend, in fact, actually, let me tell you about one that I had. And I had a scenario. Yeah, good. I like what you're thinking, Gingers. I didn't ask enough questions, because that's the truth. At the end of the day, that should be the sign. And I'm going to come back and say more about that. But I had a client that was telling me that the price range they wanted to be in was in the 700s. They had described the area they wanted it to be in. They had said all of these things. I had gone and shown them a property. And while we were at the property, they were telling me, these are the kinds of things we like. These are the kinds of things we don't like. And Then later on, they send me a property that was in a totally different area, about $200,000 above the price range that they said they were interested in. And I did the exact same thing of what Barbara's saying and what Nathan said, is feeling like, all right, you're going to waste my time to go out and look at this property that's $200,000 above. In fact, I remember saying to my wife, yeah, they want to go see this house, and I don't know what the deal is. Like, it's not in the area that they wanted. It doesn't really match what they've said they're interested in. And I think we're just going to look at it because they're retired and they just want something to do. I don't know. So we go out and we go look at this property. Well, while we're out looking at the property, the whole time we're looking at the property, they're telling me all the things like, oh, that was stupid. I don't know why people did that in the house. And I don't like this. And it's way too much house for what we would need. They're saying all of these things that would give you the impression of exactly what I just said, that they were just going out to look at it. We were wasting our time to go look at the property, and it wasn't going to be one they would want to write an offer on. Well, in the process of that, we're standing out in front of the house, and they're asking me a couple of questions about the property and this and that. And I've known these people for a long time. And so I'm just talking and talking very freely and just sharing my opinions of this. And what do you think the market's going to do, and this and that. And they say, well, the husband turns to the wife, says, so what do you think? And she's like, well, I mean, I guess maybe we should do it. And he's like, that's what I think, is like, it's like, this is exactly what we would want. And I was sitting here scratching my head going, what do you guys just sat and tore the house apart the whole time we were walking throughout it, telling me what you didn't like about it. You didn't need this and you didn't need that. Yet they decided they wanted to buy the property. Well, so here's the point, is what ends up happening is now, let me go back to my example. I send you the property saying, I want to see this property that is in a canyon tucked away by nothing but trees. Typically, we would think, all right, well, I guess I'll go show it to him, but we're wasting our time. So now you go show it to me, and similar to these buyers I was just talking about, what happens is we get out there and we start to look at this property that's in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees. And I look at it and I'm like, I love it. It's perfect. Yep, let's go write the offer. And you're doing what I did, which is scratching your head thinking, okay, this is not at all what they were saying. Well, here's what happens. And I like the way that Ginger said it, is at the end of the day, that's what comes down to, is we didn't ask enough questions that were about them. We asked too many questions that were about us, or we used too many assumptions of our own to get to where we were. Now, here's what happens. So let me take you to the next level of this here. So again, think of it this way, that this is your brain, and that the way that your brain stores information is like this. It is going to put the pictures in one area of the brain are stored in one area. Your decisions are stored in another area, and the feelings are stored in another area. So think of it this way. When you have an experience, what happens is your brain then compartmentalizes this experience. It breaks it apart. It puts the pictures in one area, the decisions in another area, and the feelings in another area. And as a result of that, what happens is that's where, when we talk about our unconscious mind, essentially think of it that way, is that we've had these experiences, we've made decisions, we've got pictures of what things should look like and feelings that we've had about things, but they get compartmentalized, broken apart, and stored in these discrete locations in your brain. Well, essentially what yours and my job is we need to then take that information that is in their brain, and ultimately what we want to do is try to reintegrate it, cause those things to come back together again. When that happens, equals a term that is called crystallization. Crystallization is the moment that the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings all come back together again. So now let me explain it to you this way. Essentially, everything we are going to talk about for the next couple of days is about causing or creating crystallization. Because here's the thing, until your client crystallizes, they're not going to make a decision. Let me say that another way. When you've had a client who you have, since we're talking buyers right now, we'll stick with that. You've got a buyer that you've been out showing properties to, that you're showing them properties over and over and over, and they just are not making a decision. Essentially, what they're telling you by not making a decision is this: they have not crystallized. Crystallization is the process of the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings reintegrating. And think of it this way: crystallization is an aha moment. Every aha moment that you have is crystallization occurring. Now, let me also say that not every time that somebody crystallizes is it an aha moment. But every time you have ever had an aha moment, that is crystallization occurring. That's the dots and things being connected and coming back together again. So every aha moment is crystallization, but not every time someone crystallizes is it going to be an aha moment. Now, the reason this is important is, and here's the thing, what I'm teaching you in today, if you don't start to implement it into your business and into your life, actually, just in terms of how you communicate with people, it has a short shelf life. And so what I mean by that is you will forget it and it will lose the power that it has in it. Let me say this another way. 6 months from now, maybe even 3 months from now, I could ask you, when you go out and you are sitting down and talking to a buyer or a seller, but since we're talking buyers right now, you're sitting down with a buyer and having them share with you what they're looking for in a home. What is the purpose of that meeting? And most of you 3 months from now would say, well, it's to find out what they want to buy. But here's what I'm telling you. The secret to getting people to buy or to make decisions is probably a better way of saying it. The secret to get people to make decisions is by getting them to crystallize. Once somebody crystallizes, they're now empowered to buy. But until they crystallize, they're not going to. So when you've got a client who's not making a decision, the first thing that should be going off in your brain, in your head, is they haven't crystallized. My job, your job, is essentially to get people to crystallize. Once they crystallize, they're empowered to make a decision. But until they crystallize, they are going to hem-haw about it. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to ask you guys over and over and over again, what is the point of doing a needs analysis? Why would we do a needs analysis with somebody? And sometimes I will refer to this process as probing, is we're going to ask probing questions, basically. So I will sometimes say, what's the purpose of a needs analysis? Or what's the purpose of us doing a probe with a client? And the purpose is to cause crystallization. It's so important you understand that, because I'm telling you, if you forget that that's the purpose, you'll get a lot of good information from your client by going and meeting with them and sitting down and talking to them. You'll get great information. But until they crystallize, unless and until they crystallize, they're not going to make a decision. So when you have someone not making a decision, it's because they have not crystallized. Once they crystallize, they're empowered to buy. Okay, so now let's go back to the my story I was telling you. So I said that I wanted to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. I sent you a property that's tucked away in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees. We go look at it. I tell you I want to buy it. I go and buy it. Now, typically what will happen when that takes place typically what happens is this. We go back to the office and we will say this to other agents. Buyers are liars. Now, most of you have probably heard that term, maybe even said that term, but here's what I'm telling you. It goes back to what Ginger had brought up about not asking enough questions or the quality of the questions. That's what I would say. See, ultimately, and this might be a little harsh for a minute, but you know, don't be offended. And if you are, get over it. But is this, typically when you hear an agent say buyers are liars, what they're really telling you is, I am not a good communicator. I mean, stop and think about it. When somebody says to you, buyers are liars, at the end of the day, what they're really saying is, I was not a very good communicator. But here's the thing. In life, as human beings, we tend to not want to take responsibility for our actions. Meaning, it couldn't be my fault that the buyer bought a different property than what they told me that they bought. It has to be on them. When we're late to a meeting, we say the traffic was horrible. See, we will turn and we blame things outside of ourselves rather than just saying, I need to change it. And here's the thing. Until you change it, there is no mandate, until you accept that it was you, there's no mandate to change it. See, as long as it was the traffic's fault, then we will continue to be late. It's not until we realize it's my interaction with the traffic, meaning it's my lack of preparation. It was me not being prepared and leaving on time was really what the issue was. But as soon as you do that, now you've taken back your power and you have the ability to change it. So when you hear somebody say buyers are liars, what they're really saying is, I was not a very good communicator. Now, I would not recommend that you go tell them that. The next time you hear an agent in the office say buyers are liars, I'm not necessarily recommending that you go, oh, I get it, you're a horrible communicator is really what you're saying, because they will be very offended at that. But if you stop and look at it and understand what we're going to talk about today, that is really what it is. Because ultimately, when I said I was in love with this property that's tucked away in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees, why? So let's go back to, and you guys tell me. I'm scrolling back here to some of the things that you guys had written down. So let me ask you this question. If I wanted to have, and I'm just going to use some of the things you guys put in the chat box. I wanted to be away from a dense population. And that's the reason I said I wanted to be high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Could I get that from being down in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees? Am I away from the dense population? Yeah. If I said the next one is views. James said that he wanted it for the views. Well, what if what I meant by that I liked the view of the city lights was just, yeah, I liked views. And what if for me, the view of trees was good? Or Nicole said large windows to see the views while I'm in the kitchen. What if what I actually liked just as much was sitting in the kitchen, looking out these large windows and seeing the trees and the wildlife and the birds or whatever? See, ultimately, or Barbara said the ambiance. Could I get that from surrounded by trees? Nathan said peaceful environment. Would I get that in a canyon surrounded by trees? See, what happens is that's what they were wanting to buy. See, the reason I had you guys tell me why you would want the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights is because it then ties it to a little bit towards this benefit. Now, we're still not there, but it ties it towards this benefit. Well, if that's the case, and I could get the same benefit being in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees, and in fact, maybe being surrounded by nothing but trees where I couldn't see any other houses was actually fulfilling that benefit even better than high on the hill with a view of the city lights. See, the reason a lot of times they say high on a hill with a view of the city lights, or the features that they're telling you, is because they just don't know that there may be some other feature that meets that benefit even better. Now, let me give you another quick example of from my lack of doing this properly for many years. And that was this, is I personally don't like homes, and for you guys that are in California, I'm gonna have to explain what these are because you don't have them there. But in Utah, we have houses that are called a split entry. The idea is you walk in the front door and you're on a landing that is, I don't know, maybe 8 by 8 or something like that, or 10 by 10 at the most. But you walk in and you're on this landing, and you either have a choice to go down to the basement, go down the stairs into the basement, or up the stairs to where the other part of the living area is. So on a split entry, I just personally don't like that house. And I don't know that I even have a reason for why I don't. I just don't. I would never want to buy one. The other thing, because living in Utah in the winter, I don't want to have to go out and scrape my windows. I would never buy a house without a garage because I don't want to go out and scrape frosted up windows. Well, as a result of that, and I say this every time I teach this class, and I've still never gone back and checked. I need to go and do it. It would be interesting to look prior to me being trained in what I'm teaching you guys today to see how many houses I sold that were split entries without a garage. Because I would be willing to bet you I probably didn't sell really very many. And if I did, it was only because the client was like, hey, I found this house, I want to go buy it. And then I probably said buyers are liars. Now, here's why. What happens is our biases that we have, we're going to then communicate those to other people. And here's what I mean by that. So I may be sitting down with a potential buyer and I may say to them, now, what type of home are you wanting to buy? And they tell me, whatever it is that they say, whatever style of home they're wanting. Well, I may say something like this to them. Well, you wouldn't want a split entry, would you? And they're going to go, oh, no. Yeah, no, we wouldn't want one of those. They might not even know what it is, or they might be fine with them. They might not have any bias towards them. But the fact that I say to them, you wouldn't want one of those, would you? They're going to be like, no. And they might not know the reason why. They might just be like, well, you're the expert, and because you don't want it, then I must not be the one to want it either. That's the subtle way that we go about doing this, is we project onto people what we think is going to be in their best interest. Now, we do that for noble reasons, actually. If you stop and think about it, when we do that, we are doing it because we are trying to care for the person. But the hard part is sometimes our bias may actually be the thing that gets in the way. See, so I would go out and I would say to people, you wouldn't want to buy that, would you? No. Now, they might have said, well, we don't really care. And even if they said we don't care, I might, even if I feel strongly enough about it, be like, oh, trust me, you'll thank me later that you didn't buy that. That's the type of stuff that we as agents do that will get in the way of our clients being able to buy the home that they want. This is where I'm coming from when I say that to you guys. Is it okay if we let them buy the house that they want? That's what I'm referring to. Okay. Now, so with that being the backdrop of it, we're going to now start to shift into a little bit. So the way that I'm building this for you guys is, think of it as we're doing it kind of brick by brick, as I got to get these pieces put in place, and then we're going to go through and we're going to really talk about how to make this work and how to implement it in your business. But I first got to make sure that you understand. So here's the next question for you. So either put it in the chat box or unmute and share with me. Why do people buy anything?
Tend to be emotional spenders.
Okay. Good. What other thoughts? Yeah, no question that it's emotional. So Austin's saying emotion as well. Yeah, but why? So, but what is it about it? Why? And I would agree. Pierce said we're emotional spenders. Totally will agree. But why would we go and do that? So Nathan's saying because we want it and then we justify it. Okay, good. I like that. And Ginger's saying the emotions, what it will do for them. Okay, good. They want it. Barbara said need it to fill a void. Okay, good. Good. Yeah, well, here's the thing. Here's the way that I like to say it. The reason that we buy anything is to fulfill a need. We're doing it to satisfy a need. Now, how would you respond if I said it to you this way? Nobody buys anything that they don't need. Nobody ever buys anything that they don't need. I'll get a drink while I wait for you to type, I guess.
I know people buy things just to buy things.
Okay, so give me an example, something that somebody, yeah, good. Ash is saying untrue. Okay, good. That's what I'm looking for, is you guys to give me a little bit of a resistance on this. Okay, so give me an example, Pierce.
Well, I know someone who has a couple of really nice cars, and he's got to go have this 1967 Chevy Malibu, and then he's got to have a Harley, and yada, yada, yada.
Okay, good. So and now here's what I'm saying though. So, and I see Austin saying not choo-choo. Nathan says Paradigm. I need a Nissan GT-R. Okay, here's what I'm telling you. Nobody buys anything.
Now, part of the reason that you guys are saying that, struggling with it maybe a little bit. Did I lose sound?
No, you didn't, Russ. It just sounds real hollow, like you're in a tunnel or something.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, yeah, for some reason my AirPods disconnected again. I don't know what happened, but okay. So what happens is this, is we think of it, so using the example that Pierce was just talking about, is somebody buying the Harley and all those kinds of things. What tends to happen is this, is we look at it from the standpoint of it doesn't make any sense to me that they would go buy it. And so we would look at it, yeah, I must need new AirPods. Love it, Austin. Exactly, something's going on with them. But yeah, what happens is this, is here's part of the problem, is when I said to you, nobody buys anything they don't need, you're thinking of it in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the physiological, because we tend to look at it and go, well, nobody really needs anything besides food, shelter, clothes, those type of things, if that makes sense. Is we tend to look at it from that standpoint of saying, well, you don't need the Nissan GT-R that Nathan was talking about. You don't need the Harley. You don't need those things. I buy stuff that I don't need. Well, here, think of it this way. There are two types of needs. There are real needs, and then there are perceived needs. See, the real needs would be the food, shelter, clothing, stuff like that we tend to think of. But there are emotional needs that we have as well. So when somebody goes out and buys those things, what they're saying is they have some need that by purchasing it is going to make them feel a certain way. This is why when you guys were saying buying a house and things is an emotional thing, what's happening is this, is we're buying it to fulfill this need. And it may not be a real need, it might be a perceived need. Now, I'll give you guys in a little bit, well, it'll probably be tomorrow at this point, but I'm going to give you guys 15 benefits, because at the end of the day, it's these 15, anytime people buy specifically a house, it is to fulfill one of these 15 benefits that we have. So when we talk about needs, I'm talking about real or perceived, because sometimes it's a perceived need. They perceive that they need the Harley. They perceive that they need a new pair of AirPods. They perceive that they need these things. And as a result of that, they then go and do it. And the reason, sometimes it's just the acquisition of the thing that fulfills the need. See, that's why a lot of times you could go buy something that then you never even use it. And sometimes I'll pick on some of the women that are in the class to say, do you have any clothes that you bought that are hanging in your closet that still have the tags on them? I'm seeing Barbara shake her head, yes. Okay, so why did you buy them? Why did you buy it if it's still hanging in your closet with the tags on? Anyone want to share?
I've got an answer for that. Because
Okay.
you're gonna lose weight and it's going to fit.
Okay, good. Good. And Barbara said it's on sale. Good. So actually now, since we're talking a little bit about language and things, so Ginger, since you brought up losing weight, let me ask you guys a question. What happens if you lose your wallet? What do you want to do?
You're frantic, you're focused, you're going to find it, and nothing else matters.
Guess what happens when we lose weight?
Uh, we're frantic. We've lost
We wanna
it.
go
We
find
don't
it.
like to lose
we-
anything. We're going to find it
We
and
gotta-
get it back.
That's right. Now you know why, if you've ever had the experience of losing 15, 20 pounds and then gaining it back again, if the words that you used to describe it were lose weight, I lost X amount of weight, it's just like your wallet. If you lose it, you want to go find it. And for me, here, this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but not too much. Let me tell you, for me personally, I'm going to be just real honest, truthful with you guys about how it works for me. This is how my brain works. I will gain weight until the clothes that I'm wearing are too tight. And I don't like to go buy new clothes. So when the option is lose weight or don't wear clothes, then what happens is I go, okay, I got to start eating healthy. I got to exercise more. And then I will do that. And in fact, I did this. So during COVID, all the jokes early on were about like all the weight people were putting on because they were working from home. I actually was losing weight during that time. And I went down about 10 pounds. Well, here's what happens. All of a sudden, my clothes are not fitting me real well. And I either need to go take them in and have the pants taken in, or I got to go buy new clothes. Well, mentally, I go, well, I don't want to do that. So I just will. Now, this goes on an unconscious level for me, but I recognize it when it's happening, that I go, well, all right, well, I'm in a good spot. I'm happy. If I just stayed right here, it'd be okay. It won't hurt to go eat a Whopper. It won't hurt to go eat some donuts and things like. And then you do it for a week and you get on the scale and you're the same and you're like, yeah, see, it didn't matter. But then it catches up to you. So here's the thing. So with that, as we're going back, so I'll try to rein this back into where we're talking about here. But what ends up happening is that we relate to things. We have these real needs and we have perceived needs. And a lot of what's going on is in the unconscious part of it. See, for me, I would rather lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, than go buy new clothes. But if I would change it, and I like the way that Ginger said it here, is maybe a better word is relinquish or get rid of, annihilate, I don't know, destroy, something that we would call it. But if we will change the way we relate to it, it'll change how we respond to it as well. And in fact, there was a Japanese scientist, and I'm not thinking of the guy's name right now. One of you guys maybe will remind me. But he did a study about the words that we use, and he did it with water. And he would have something saying like just these horrible, mean words as he would take water and freeze it, and then he would look at the ice crystals that it made. And he would do the same thing using positive, good words. And it was amazing what he found was the crystals that it would make based upon the negative were not as clear as the ones that when it was positive. And so if who we are is a huge percentage of what our body is as water, and that negativity can have that type of a response to water, think about what our thoughts, negative thoughts and things do to us. All right, total sidebar from what we're really talking about. But here's the thing, is just keep in mind that when people are communicating to you, they're doing it from this unconscious level. And so our job is we've got to become better communicators in order to get them to do that. So there's two types of needs. There's real needs and there are perceived needs. Okay. So real needs and perceived needs. And I got to look at my notes real quick because I feel like I'm forgetting to tell you something. What was it? I guess not. I guess we're good. Let me just make sure here. Oh, okay. Yep. Nope. This is what it was. Okay. So here's what happens. Where this gets us into trouble is when I said I wanted the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, what tends to happen is I'm communicating one thing, but I actually mean something different. So the problem is when our clients are talking to us, they will, and we're all guilty of this, but we will tend to communicate one thing when we actually mean something beyond what we're talking about. That's the idea of let me tie this for you. these features and benefits. We say one thing, but we mean something else. So hopefully that makes sense. We tend to communicate one thing when we mean something else. All right, so here's what I want to do now. Let me show you what I mean about how this problem creates for us and what gets in the way. So is somebody willing to unmute and interact with me based upon the questions that they had written down at the start of the class? When I asked you to write down 2 or 3 questions that would help you know what I'm looking for in a home. No one?
I'll do it.
All right, thanks, Ginger. Okay, so you and I have met somehow. I've come to your office. We've exchanged niceties. We're ready to now start talking about what I'm looking for in a home. Now, typically how I would do this is if we were here together in person, I would have you come up in front of the class and we would pass. I call it passing the baton. So I would get like a marker here and we would pass this back and forth and be like, okay, the only person that can talk is the person holding this. So we'll kind of do a version of that as best as we can over Zoom. So, but here's what we're going to do is you're going to ask me a question and then after I'll answer it and then you just go to your next question. And what I want to show you guys is basically what it looks like when we are doing this with our clients. Okay. So go ahead and fire away with your first question you would typically ask.
Okay, well, thank you, Russ. Is there a certain part of the valley, a location where you would like to live?
Okay, you cut out for a second, but you're back. Okay, certain part of the
Oh.
valley that I would like to live. Yeah, I want to be somewhere in the central part of the valley. I want easy access.
Okay, easy access. What does easy access mean to you?
Just meaning to be able to get around town and not be a long ways, I guess, from the freeway.
Is that for work, shopping, family?
Yes. All the above.
You're making this difficult.
I am making it a little difficult on purpose, but
Yeah, I can tell.
but I got to prove a point. So
Okay, so is that freeway access then?
yeah. I mean, freeway or even, just basically, I just don't want to do a lot of stop and go traffic.
Not a lot of stop and go traffic. Okay. And do you have a preference on the west side being close to access or on the east side?
I don't know that it matters too much. Yeah, I don't think it matters west or east. I mean, I probably would favor the west side only because I grew up there, but that's it.
Okay. And what kind of price are you looking for? What do you want to spend? What are you comfortable with?
Yeah, good question. I haven't talked to a lender or anything yet, so I don't really know.
Okay, well, that's going to be one of the first things we want to do before we go look at homes is to have you talk to a lender and get you pre-qualified. I have a lender that we can call in just a few minutes and get that started before you even leave.
Perfect.
Okay, so easy access, not a lot of stop and go traffic. Where do you work?
So I work for Century 21.
Okay, and where are they located?
So in Midvale.
In Midvale. Okay, well, that's kind of in the middle of the valley, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Close to work. All righty. And are you looking for a home with a garage, Russ?
For sure. Yes.
Okay, does that need to be 2-car, 3-car?
Yeah, at least 3.
At least 3-car garage. Okay. And are you interested in something that's pretty and nice and move-in ready and been updated, or are you more looking for a fixer-upper, something that you can get a better value on and do the work yourself?
Oh, I don't want to do any work. Yeah, no. So fixed up.
Fixed up. Okay.
Yep.
And do you have any pets, any dogs or anything?
I do have a dog that my wife wishes we didn't, but yes.
Okay, so I'm guessing you'd like a fenced backyard, is that correct?
Yeah, that would be good. Yes.
Okay, a fenced backyard with some grass. What size lot do you want? Do you like doing yard work, or are you more in whatever's the easiest and low maintenance?
For me, low maintenance. My wife wants an acre though.
Okay, so you kind of mixed on that.
Mhm.
Who usually wins in an argument like that?
Well, I guess in our last house, I guess I did, but usually she does.
Okay, usually she does. And
Which I'm just being honest, by the way. I'm
well, I
telling you, this
appreciate,
is how I would be answering your questions.
yes, I appreciate that. It's quite often that there's, wife wants one thing, husband wants something else. So tell me a little bit more about your lifestyle and how do you picture yourself living day to day in this house?
Okay, good. So I'm gonna stop right there. So because here where Ginger is going right now is perfect. That is what we want to do. But can I pick on for a minute how you did it? We're doing prior to that.
Sure.
Okay, so which this is normal of how we typically do it. And now remember I said to you guys, I typically, if we were in class, how I would have done it was we would be passing a baton. Like how I would have done it with Ginger is I would have said, you can only talk if you're holding this. I can only talk if I'm holding it. And then I would have had you guys see to pay attention to how that conversation went back and forth by seeing us pass the baton. So let me just ask real quick, you guys tell me, this conversation was about to change, which is why I'm stopping it, because that's what I want to talk about. But prior to that moment, who did most of the talking? So, and this is not for Ginger to answer, it's for you guys to answer. What did you notice? Who was doing most of the talking?
I think you were,
Ginger.
Russ.
You feel like I was?
Ginger.
Okay, so I
No,
have one that I
Ginger.
was, and Barbara saying Ginger. What about the rest of you?
I says Ginger.
Okay. Who else? Ginger or equal, Austin says. Okay, good. So now here's what happens is typically though, and which Ginger has been in the business for a while. So typically if I grabbed one of you guys that is a newer agent, what it would have looked like was something like this. You would have been saying to me, how many bedrooms, how many baths, how many square feet, what's the lot size, where do you want to be? Okay, let's go look at houses. Like that's typically what happens. And typically the agent ends up doing most of the talking. And so even with Austin saying that it was equal or that Ginger was doing more, what we want is to have the client doing most of the talking. We want it to be us doing very little of the talking. And if that's the case, then we know that we're doing it right. Now here's why. Now, so here's your first test of the class. Why is that the case? What are we trying to cause to happen? This is where I test it. This test is not for you. It's for how good of a teacher I've been. So I'll grade myself. You can't give a wrong answer. Give it to me, Bunny. You unmuted.
I'm too new at this. I'm scared. I was just basically thinking that you're forming a relationship with that client, and they should be able to talk, and then you gather the knowledge and go from there.
Okay, good. Yeah. So you're right on. You're right on. Is that if we do this right, it is going to create a bond between us and the client. So good. Let's see. Ginger said the client to open up and reveal. Okay, good. To identify the client's needs. Good. So far, I've failed as a teacher. So remember, I'm not. This test isn't on you. It was for me. But I'm going to get it to where by the end of the day, you guys are going to answer this correctly. It is to cause crystallization. What I'm trying to do is to cause crystallization. Now, if I cause crystallization, then what Ginger said is correct. They're going to open up and reveal. Then what Pierce said is right, is I'm going to identify their needs. Then what Bunny said is correct as well. What's going to happen is that they are going to feel a connection between us. But at the end of the day, It is about causing crystallization. So I'm going to keep testing you on it, because remember I told you 3 months from now, if I asked you why we are doing this, you would have forgotten. Well, it's only been about 15 minutes and you've already forgotten. And I'm joking a little bit with you guys. But keep in mind, I'm trying to create crystallization. Now, here's what tends to happen. The way that we tend to communicate, the way you and I have been trained to communicate. So it's not bad. This is just how every one of us is trained to communicate. We have been trained to communicate through this back and forth. I ask a question, I hand it to you, you answer. Now, a lot of times what will happen, and Ginger didn't do this too much, but typically what happens, most agents that I do this with, so I can tell that she is a pretty good communicator because of this. What tends to happen though is when I get, and specifically more so with men. So I probably should have said, give me one of the men in the class to come and do this exercise with me. Because here's what happens is, if you, anthropologists would say, if you went back in time, well, in fact, I'm going to ask you guys the question so I keep you more involved in the class here. What was the man's job 1,000 years ago? And really, we don't even have to go that far back, but let's just say 1,000 years ago, what was the man's job? That's right. Pierce said hunt. Austin said go and hunt. That's right. The men's job was to go hunt. What was the woman's job? Yeah, good. So yeah, they're saying gather, which, so that could be, yeah, go gather berries, but nurture is what Ginger's saying. At the end of the day, essentially, the woman's job, if you went back in time, is to nurture. It's to take care. See, our job, men's job's to hunt and gather. So guess what we tend to do when we get into a conversation? We want to hunt and gather. We want to go kill something. See, that's where we come from, is for a man, it is embedded into us of you should go fix the problem. See, well, ladies, you don't want the problem fixed all the time. Sometimes you just want to be listened to, right? But because we're men and we feel like we're supposed to go hunt, what happens is we want to go do that. But see, the women tend to nurture. So because of that, don't be offended, guys, but us men have a harder time learning this process of creating crystallization than what the women do. Women typically, just by nature, are going to be better at this because they're more nurturing. Now, good news, bad news, as the last 50 years or so have gone, that's shifted a little bit. As women have gone more and more into the workplace, they have become a little bit more of hunters. And the men, as a result, I would say, have maybe learned a little bit of being nurturing. So like I said, good news, bad news. But think of it this way. We want to stay more into that mindset of we want to be more of a gatherer, of gathering the information. We're not necessarily going out and hunting for the kill per se. Okay. So as a result of that, what we want to do is women typically will learn this easier than the men, because typically if I would have had one of the men ask me your questions, it would have looked like this. How many bedrooms? I would have said, I don't know, 3 or 4. Okay, how many baths? Probably 3 or 4 baths as well. All right, how many car garage? 4 car garage. Okay, where do you want it to be? In the central part of the valley. Okay, should we go look at houses? Like that's kind of typically what it would look like. But in order for us to create crystallization, because remember, that's what we're trying to do. We want to create crystallization. If we're going to do that, we've got to do it in a different way. All right, let's see. Pierce said, I refer to my wife as the CEO of domestic affairs. All right. Okay, so here's what we got to do then. If we're going to do this, we've got to approach it in a different standpoint. See, so I want to do this again, but now, so Ginger, will you do it again with me, interact with me? Although this time I'm going to be the agent, you get to be the client, okay? And I'm going to do this and I'm going to show it to you guys. Pay attention to the differences, because here's what tends to happen. A lot of times, and I see this both with men and women, typically more so with men, but we tend to do things like this. Do you want a big yard or a small yard? Do you want 2-car garage or a 3-car? Do you want a lot of windows or little windows? Do you want big windows or small? We tend to give options to people, and that blocks crystallization. So let me show you how we would want to do this. So Ginger, are you okay? Are you okay doing this and you being the client and just going into that mindset of if you were buying a house?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, good. So now I'm going to show you guys how I would go about this. That's going to be a little bit different than the way we typically would. So I'm typically going to start by asking for permission, which I just did. You guys didn't catch it, but I just asked for permission. Now I'll show you what that looks like for us as we're going to do this with our clients. But then I'm going to start with using something called a directive, and I'll say more about these after. So Ginger, describe for me your ideal home.
My ideal home, well, it's kind of hard because I actually like so many different types of homes.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so just describe for me what the ideal home would look like.
It would be probably a Rambler with a larger kitchen than I have now, with a larger garage than I have now.
Sure.
I would like a yard in a PUD,
Mhm.
but not a really small yard, basically enough room to have extended family over and entertain.
Okay, great. Hey, you're doing a really good job. Tell me more.
Well, I'd like it to be in a safe area and something that is not a lot of maintenance.
Okay, sure. Yeah, you're doing a really good job explaining. I'm getting a really good picture. Keep going.
Oh, what else? I'd like an updated kitchen.
Oh, sure. Yeah, totally makes sense. What else?
And I do actually like large master bedrooms. I want the master bedroom to be large enough to have a sitting area because that's my retreat, and a large enough closet because I love clothes.
Awesome. Good. Good for you. Yeah, I can see that. That would be great. What else?
Well, just, in the Salt Lake area.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so somewhere in Salt Lake. Perfect. Keep
Mhm.
going.
I do like trees,
Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
and probably, well, I'm wishy-washy on this, but I do like houses that have a creek or a stream running past them, along the property border. But I don't know of any that you can find like that are in a PUD. And then the other side of me says, well, when I have grandchildren, that'll be unsafe. So like I said, I'm kind of mixed.
Kind of mixed on that. Okay, sure. Yeah, what else do I need to know?
That's really all.
That's it. Okay, good. All right, so now you guys tell me, so either unmute or throw it in the chat box. And then, sorry, I should have taken that screen off so that we could see before, but you guys now unmute or throw in the chat box. What'd you notice that time? What was the difference?
You keep going and going. What else? What else? What else?
Okay, good. Yeah, and I'll say more about that. What else do you guys notice?
Well, Ginger did
actually-
most of the talking.
Yeah, and how much talking did I do compared to her?
Oh,
Very
And-
little.
And Russ, you
Also,
really
at the beginning,
did-
she was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Austin.
Oh, I was just gonna say at the beginning, she said, "I don't know, I'm not really sure," but she became more and more sure as she kind of imagined it, and was able to relay more details to you, so to give you a really good picture of what she.
Okay, good. Yeah, now go ahead. You were going to say something else, Ginger.
Yeah, my observation is you didn't really ask questions. You said, tell me about what the kind of house you want. Tell me more. Tell me more. So you really didn't ask questions. You
Yeah.
more gave me a command. And
yeah.
then you also, of course, validated what I said,
Mhm.
and then tell me more.
Good, perfect. Yes, yeah, good. You guys did great noticing all that. Good. Yeah, notice. So remember I said that a lot of times our own biases will enter into this. So let me ask you another question, Ginger. So going back to when you were asking me questions, do you have animals?
No.
Oh, you don't? Okay, good. So because a lot of times what'll happen is when she was asking me the questions, when she was the agent, and she said, "Do you have animals?" Typically, what I have found, which was not the case in this one, but usually what I've found is we will ask questions that are more about us, meaning that generally she would have asked the question about animals because she has a dog that she would want a fence for. But my guess is you've just done it long enough that you've come across realizing that that's going to be something that people, if they have animals, they want a fence. If they don't, they might not.
Well, actually, if I may, where I had background doing interior design before becoming a real estate agent.
Okay.
So
that
coming
makes
from the
sense.
perspective of an interior designer, it's all about understanding the client, understanding, like you said, asking questions about their feelings, asking questions about the pictures in their mind. Because I would ask them, what kind of feeling do you want in this room? What kinds of things will you be doing here? And so that has helped me as an agent to get into their, not just their minds, but more get into their being, their feelings, their emotions, because they're going to buy based on emotions to help, to narrow down very quickly and find very quickly what kind of property they want. So I'm able to not have to show them tons and tons of properties because I, go with that intention in the questions that I ask. And then I observe and I look carefully at the properties and say, okay, I can see that this matches what they were communicating with me. So
Perfect. Good. Okay. And then Barbara had a question for you. She said, "How did you feel about me just saying, tell me more?"
I felt awkward and on the spot. And I felt that I felt emotions coming up inside of me.
And say more about that. What do you mean about the emotions?
That's probably just me personally as Ginger,
Okay.
just about my own situation of, do I stay where I'm living or do I move, and what do I want to do, and considering remodeling my own house. So that's just kind of my own personal situation. But yeah, it definitely feels a little bit awkward and on the spot. And but then I think I began to relax once I kind of formulated some of the dreams and things that I've had in years past.
Okay, good. Yeah. So, and here's the thing too, to keep in mind for everyone else is in terms of us doing this is, yeah, it is going to be a little awkward because she's doing it in front of 15 other people that are watching versus typically I would be we would be sitting in a conference room or something, and it might be 2 or 3 people max that is sitting there. So but yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
So, do you normally take that approach to just, repeating and affirming kind of what she said, but just saying, tell me more? Is that the way you do it normally?
Yeah. So yes. So what we want to do, and for sure, you have to do that repeating and affirming of just, hey, that's great. I'm getting a really good picture. Oh yeah, that's interesting. Oh, I love that idea. Like the more of that you will do, the more it helps them then to relax, to be able to be willing to share with you what they are thinking. So yeah, great question.
Okay, so I'm an amiable.
Me too.
So
Me too.
really?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I felt Ginger's, I don't know, anxiety or whatever it was. So is there a way to still repeat and affirm, but kind
Yes.
of have more feeling with that person that you're speaking to?
Yeah, so let me show you. So, and I probably should have done this even a little bit better than what I did. Remember I said that you have to start with permission. So the first thing that we're going to do is we have to get permission. Now, permission is, and I'm going to, I'll give this to you guys. We're going to talk more of it tomorrow. I wasn't intending to today. So I'll give it to you, the detail of it tomorrow, because I still want to set the stage. But the first thing that we want to do is permission. Permission sounds like this. And I'll say this many times, so you don't need to worry about writing it down necessarily right now. But this, if I were doing this for real, if this was with a real client with Ginger, I would have done it this way. We would have chit chatted for a little bit, and then I would have said, all right, well, so Ginger, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. And some of the questions may be personal, maybe things you haven't considered about the home before. Would that be okay? And then she would have said yes. And then I would go on. Now, if she didn't say yes, then I wouldn't. So let's see. Ginger said, please clarify about tomorrow. Yeah, so I apologize on that. So I think some of you might have, there went out two different schedules. Initially, there was supposed to be, George was doing an Elevate class for the brokers tomorrow, and then that got canceled. So initially, when we first sent out the schedule, it had me not teaching a class tomorrow. But and so what I was going to do is I was going to cram everything into today for the needs analysis, but then that got canceled. So as a result, then we changed it back up again. So anyway, so yeah, so the schedule. So let me clarify on that. The schedule will be the needs analysis today. We'll do needs analysis tomorrow. Then we're going to do. Oh no, actually, I take that back. I think we still were going to do it, but it was going to be Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? So yeah, so my plan is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is what, so it went out two different ways. At first went out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then I found out George was doing the class, so I changed it. Then he didn't do the class, so I changed it back. So I just kind of messed everybody up. So the plan is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week. So yeah, so tomorrow will be day 2 of this. Then Wednesday will be the listing presentation, Friday or Thursday, sorry, SOI, and then nothing Friday. So yeah, I apologize for that. But so if for some reason somebody can't be here tomorrow, then it'll be recorded. But all right, so permission. So on permission is, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, need to ask you some questions, maybe things you haven't considered, may even make you a little uncomfortable. You don't have to say uncomfortable. I've found, especially Barbara, typically amiables, and I am as well, is I was hesitant at first to say might make you uncomfortable. So if you are, you can say it this way. In order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. They may be things you haven't considered, and maybe things that that you haven't really thought about, but would it be okay if we talk about them? And then they'll say, yeah, that's fine. And then from there you can jump in. So permission is, you got to ask for permission first. Now, the next step of this then is, and Ginger brought it up, which when she said that I wasn't really asking questions, I was more using what we call directives. So the next piece of this is directives. So this is kind of where we start with, is I'm going to start with a directive. Think of it this way. The way that your brain works is like a computer, meaning it responds based upon the information that it's given. So if I said to you, describe for me your ideal home, I'm giving a command basically to your brain. And we want to do it that way. So directives are going to be things like this. Describe for me, or we'll say, tell me about, or we could say, share with me, or help me understand.
Russ,
Yes.
just an observation or something to consider. Describe for me, tell me about, share with me. Subconsciously, you're making it about me in using that language, in my opinion, rather than the client.
Yeah, I see what you're
You
saying.
know what I mean? I'm making it about me for the agent. Describe for me. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
So
I do
think
know what you're
that-
saying.
I think that the language could be changed a little bit. So again, the focus is on them, not on the agent.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to think that through of, I mean, I guess help me understand would probably, but ultimately what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to give, so I'll have to think about how I could word that would be still a directive, because it needs to be a directive that we're,
Well, for example, I mean, I understand help me understand because that's actually kind of coming from a place of compassion and empathy.
mhm.
But like, for example, describe for me, I would just say describe. Leave the for me off of there. Describe your
The ideal
ideal
home, that
home.
would work. Yeah, there you go.
Des-
That would work.
Describe, describe how you would see yourself day to day in your home, or describe, tell me why that's, well, yeah, there's that tell me, but yeah, anyway,
Yeah, no,
especially on the describe, describe it, but it doesn't need to be for me. You're describing it for you so I can find you your house.
yeah, no, I'm good with that. So yeah, describe your ideal home. And I guess you could say, yeah, I'll think about that of how to really word that. But yeah, describe your ideal home. So here's the idea is, so, okay, Nicole's saying, what is important to you about that? So here's the problem though. Nicole was saying, what is important to you about that is, and I know we're still scratching the surface on this. What's important to you about it is going to come later on. It's a little premature to ask that right now. And the reason is, in fact, actually, let me pause for a second. What are we doing this whole thing for? What's the purpose of it? Sum it up into one word.
Crystallization.
Okay, good. See, I'm getting better as a teacher. Yeah, so now keep in mind, causing the crystallization will create the relationship. It will create them to feel heard. So like, meaning even though I'm getting you to say it as crystallization, we're causing crystallization. Keep in mind that I also recognize that part of the process of that crystallization will create a connection between you and them. Okay. So the reason why I say that is that sometimes we want to hurry and rush through this and hurry and get to where we can go. And you'll have to pardon the analogy that I'm going to give, but it honestly, it suits best how to describe it. So I don't have a better way. So if it offends you, I'm sorry. We want to skip the foreplay and go have real estate with our clients. See, don't get in such a rush to hurry and go show your clients properties. Instead, like, we want to slow the process down to be like, okay, help me understand what it is that you're looking for in a property then. So that we are getting it as, look, and it ties back to the permission. In order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, which the language on that one, Ginger, is exactly tied for what you're saying. A lot of times I will hear agents say, describe for me, or it's not describe, sorry. In order for me to determine whether or not I can work with you. Well, we don't want to say that. We want to say it as, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you. See, because it is an us process and it is about me helping them. In order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I'm going to need to ask you some questions that may feel personal. They may be things you haven't considered. Is that going to be okay? And then they're going to say yes. And if they say no, then you got a problem anyway, that if they're not going to want to talk to you that way. So I start with that. In order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. Then from there I can say, and I'll figure out the wording on this, but describe what the ideal home looks like for you. And maybe that's the way we say it. Describe what the ideal home looks like for you. Then they're going to start to talk about it. Now, here's the key piece on this. The way that you and I have been trained to communicate, and the way that they're typically going to, is they're going to think that you want them to communicate with you at this 10% level, at the surface level. So they're usually going to start with, well, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage in this area. They're going to stay at that surface because they think that's what you want. But it is by you doing the next piece of this, which is we are going to use what we call prompters. And prompters are what else say more, or keep going? What else? Say more, keep going, or tell me more. You could say it that way too. Tell me more. And the idea of tell me more is more of that you're being like, it's, hey, this is great. Tell me more. Like, I'm excited to hear what you're sharing with me. Tell me more. So what else? Say more, keep going, some version of that. And I tried to use each of those so that I wasn't only saying, tell me more only. I was, hey, what else? Keep going. The idea of this is when we do that, what's going to happen then is it causes them to start to dig down into this area here, which is going to cause the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings to start to reintegrate, which that's where you heard Ginger say it was starting to bring up feelings. Well, that's part of what the process of this is. What I'm trying to create is that crystallization. And crystallization is when the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings will then reintegrate, will equal crystallization. And along the way, it is going to create a connection where they feel like they have been heard. So let me, for today, let me kind of wrap it up with what we're talking about, and then we're going to build. We'll pick up from here tomorrow on this. But let me do it this way. Let me explain it to you this way, how this really profoundly influenced me. I'm going to give you two examples of this. The first one was when I learned this, I was first introduced to this in 1997, but I actually didn't get trained to the point of being able to train it until 1999. So I worked with it from 1997 to 1999. So about 2 years. And I saw the impact that it had in my business. So when I first learned this, I had sat down with the very first client that I worked with, and I took them through the process. And at the end of the process, when I then went out to show them properties, what I found is it reduced dramatically the number of properties that I ended up showing to the client. And so I became sold on it to the point of, hey, I want to learn this, and I want to learn it to the point I could go and train it to other people. So in 1999, I went to the guy that trained me in this, and I said to him, hey, I want to learn how to do this. I want to learn how to train it. I want to make sure I really understand it. And so he then had me fly out to San Francisco to where he was going to be doing a training to start to participate in it. And then from there, he let me just observe him and start working with him on it from that point on. Well, in 2004 then, so I spent about 4 years on being trained on it before I then started to actually train on it. Well, when I was out there though in San Francisco, starting to learn this, he was training it to, there was a real estate agent there, that was me. There was a broker, there was a loan officer, there was a financial planner, and then I can't remember what the other person was. It was another loan officer or financial planner, or it was an insurance guy. So anyway, he had me sit down and have the loan officer take me through the process that we're talking about. So the loan officer said to me, Russ, describe for me the ideal loan officer. Well, I had been in the business at that point for about 4 years. So I was like, okay, let me tell you what the ideal loan officer looks like. And I just started to list it off. They're going to do this. They're not going to do that. They're going to tell me this. They're going to keep me updated. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. Well, at the end, I remember at the very end, I said to this guy, man, I wish you were a loan officer in Salt Lake because I would give you all my business. And right as I said that is when then we talk about crystallization, I crystallized. It hit me big time of this guy had not said anything. He had done exactly what you just observed me doing. Describe for me your ideal loan officer. And then he went, okay, yeah, sure. Makes sense. Uh-huh. What else? Okay. Yep. Uh-huh. Sure. Yeah. Tell me more. Okay. Uh-huh. Wow. Yep. Interesting. Keep going. That's all he did. He didn't tell me anything that he was going to do. And yet at the end of that presentation that he did with me, or that interview, I said to him, I wish you were a loan officer in Salt Lake because I would give you my business. See, I felt like this guy had listened to me. I felt like he understood what I was trying to accomplish as an agent. And I felt like he was going to be the one to do it. Now, at the end of the day, obviously, we've got to then deliver on that, meaning we can't go to an appointment and have them leave feeling like, oh, they heard me and they're perfect. and then we don't go and implement based upon what they said. That's got to happen. Otherwise, it's going to create an issue. So for me, that's where I would say that the hugest impact it had was that day that I realized this is what the client is going to feel like, is they're going to feel heard and they're going to feel understood, because we're saying, we are repeating back, part of what they've said, and or been excited about it, giving them positive feedback of, oh, that's great. Yeah. Oh yeah. So when Ginger was saying a stream in the backyard, I'm like, oh yeah, totally makes sense. But then she's like, but then as I have grandkids, I don't know, maybe that's not safe. So maybe I don't want it. So now I'm going to flip into that side and be like, yeah, that's a good point. That's something to consider, that, is that going to be safe for the grandkids? You're going to want to consider that. So, well, keep going. Tell me more. See, that's how this process is going to work. Now, we are scratching the surface of this. So tomorrow, what we're going to do then is I'm going to refresh your memory about this. And the first thing I'm going to ask you tomorrow is, why are we doing this? And I hope the answer is crystallized. But if not, it's okay. Then I'll keep hammering on you to get it there. But because what we got to do is get them to crystallize. Because until somebody crystallizes, they're not going to buy. Now, the way that people typically crystallize without this process is through what's called information loading. If you're having to show people lots and lots of properties, the way they're crystallizing is through information loading. You just keep showing them properties, and they on their own, as they go look at properties, start to sort of filter through this. It just takes a bunch of time, a lot longer for them to crystallize through information loading. We're just trying to speed up the process by having them describe it. Now, keep in mind, we're at the surface of this. We're scratching the surface, and I'm going to show you how you're going to dig down, because we're at this point, we're still talking only at features, and people don't buy features. They buy the benefit the feature provides. We don't buy features, we buy the benefit that feature provides. So when they show up telling us the features they want, it is just a way of describing the benefit they're trying to get. And if we can get to the benefit, there are other features that can meet that benefit. So hopefully that makes sense. So, all right, any questions or anything? Or if not, we'll wrap it up and then we'll pick up tomorrow morning, same time. Okay. Well, thanks for being here, guys. So we'll tomorrow, same time, and we'll just I'll do a little bit of refresher about what got us to where we're at, and then from there we will we'll start into this. So think of it as there's 3 tools. So let me kind of sum it up this way. The lights just went off because I'm not moving enough, apparently, or something. There we go. Think of it as we're going to use 3 tools. This over here is tool number 1. Tool number 1 is designed to get them to picture it. That's the whole thing that I was doing. What you saw me doing with Ginger is getting them to picture it. Tomorrow, we're going to get into tools 2 and 3, which tool number 2 is going to be this and 3 is here. So anyway, all right, thanks, guys. We will see you in the morning, and we'll keep this rocking and rolling. Thanks for being here.